The Pinocchio Paradox begins with a simple yet puzzling statement. My nose will grow now. Pinocchio, the wooden boy whose nose grows whenever he lies, has spoken something that twists itself into an endless loop. If his nose grows, it means the statement was a lie. But if it was a lie, then his nose must grow, making the statement true. Around and around it spins, a cycle of contradiction that never quite resolves. Imagine Geppetto's workshop, its quiet corners bathed in the warm glow of lantern light. The air carries the soft scent of sawdust and varnish, mingling with the faint creak of wooden beams overhead. Pinocchio sits motionless on a small wooden stool, his painted eyes fixed in eternal wonder. Outside, the evening hush has settled over the village, the stars beginning their gentle glimmer against the night sky. As you consider his words, let your mind drift into the intricacies of the paradox. Truth and falsehood appear as opposites, yet here they weave together in a seamless loop. One cannot exist without the other, each depending on its counterpart for meaning. It's a reminder, perhaps, of life's own dualities, of how light and shadow, certainty and doubt often coexist, shaping one another in quiet harmony. And so, in the flickering quiet of the workshop, you might find a peaceful thought. Not every question needs an answer. Some puzzles, like the Pinocchio Paradox, simply invite you to sit with them, to feel the rhythm of their endless turning. There's no urgency here, no need to untangle the loop. Let it spin softly in your mind, like a wheel rolling gently into the distance. As the glow of the workshop begins to fade, imagine yourself stepping outside. The cool night air greets you, carrying with it the faint scent of pine trees and a damp earth. Above, the stars stretch endlessly, their light serene and steady. Just as you begin to lose yourself in their quiet beauty, another thought gently takes form, as though carried on the same breeze. The card paradox. Now, picture yourself in a tranquil garden, the kind that feels untouched by time. You find a card resting on a small wooden table, its edges slightly worn, as if it has passed through many curious hands. You pick it up, turning it over gently. On one side, the card reads, "The statement on the other side is true." You flip it over, and the other side declares, "The statement on the other side is false." For a moment, you pause, letting the paradox unfold in your mind. If the first side is true, then the second must also be true, but that would make the first false. If the first side is false, then the second side must also be false, making the first true. The logic spirals endlessly, like a soft ripple spreading across a still pond. You sit on the garden bench, the card resting in your hand as you gaze at the flowers swaying gently in the evening breeze. The paradox asks nothing of you. It simply exists, inviting you to wonder. Perhaps it's a reflection of how the world itself operates, filled with mysteries that may never be unraveled. And that's all right. Not every thread must be untangled. Some are meant to be admired for their complexity, their beauty in remaining unresolved. As you place the card back on the table, the garden grows quieter still. The warm hues of twilight give way to the cool tones of night, and the paradox fades into the stillness, its endless loop now a distant echo. And just as softly as the card paradox fades, another begins to take shape, as if borne on the same soothing current of thought. Picture now a quiet room, illuminated by a soft, golden light. On a simple wooden table, before you rest two boxes. The first is transparent, containing 1,000. its contents visible and certain. The second is opaque, hiding its mystery. It contains either $1,000 or nothing at all. This is Newcomb's paradox, a puzzle of choice and prediction, gently drawing you into its quiet intrigue. Newcomb's paradox unfolds like a gentle whisper in the stillness, its quiet weight lingering in your mind. The room around you seems timeless, its soft golden glow inviting contemplation without urgency. You glance at the two boxes before you, the transparent one with its certain 1,000 and the opaque one holding either 1,000,000 or nothing at all. The paradox is not simply in the boxes, but in the unseen force behind them, the predictor. This predictor, nearly infallible, has already foretold what you will do. If it has predicted that you will take only the opaque box, it has placed $1,000 inside it. If it has predicted you will take both boxes, it left the opaque one empty. The choice feels like your own, yet it is intertwined with the predictor's near perfect accuracy. Do you trust the unseen force and take only the opaque box, or do you grasp for both, seeking certainty in the transparent? The air in the room feels light, almost imperceptible, as if it carries the weight of possibility rather than answers. The paradox is not a question of what you should do, but of how choice itself is shaped by trust, by doubt, by the invisible threads that guide our actions. It asks you to sit with the uncertainty, to feel the soft pull of each option without needing resolution. Imagine the boxes fading into the quiet, their presence dissolving like the last notes of a lullaby. The room grows softer still, its edges blurring, until you are left with only the calm rhythm of your breath. And as Newcomb's paradox gently recedes into the stillness, another puzzle begins to take shape, seamlessly flowing from the same quiet stream of thought, the problem of induction. Now, imagine a peaceful meadow stretching out before you, the grasses swaying gently under a wide, open sky. The air is warm, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and earth. You are seated on a smooth rock near a small brook, its waters glimmering as they wind their way through the landscape. The world feels predictable here, steady, as though it has always been this way and will always remain. The problem of induction, however, quietly challenges this comforting thought. It asks, how can we be certain that the patterns of the past will continue into the future? The sun has risen every day you've been alive. The seasons have turned with regularity, and the brook before you flows steadily onward. But does this mean they always will? Or is it merely an assumption, a leap of faith that the universe's patterns will hold? As you sit by the brook, you notice how the water catches the sunlight, reflecting fleeting, shimmering patterns on the stones beneath it. Each moment is unique, yet it feels part of an unbroken continuity. This is the paradox of induction, a quiet tension between the reliability of past experience and the uncertainty of what lies ahead. Let your thoughts rest here in this meadow of possibility. The paradox doesn't demand an answer. Instead, it offers a reminder. Even in uncertainty, there is beauty, the flow of the brook, the warmth of the sun, the gentle rustling of the grasses. They are enough for now, whether they hold true forever or just for this moment. The problem of induction is not a burden, but an invitation to embrace the present, to find comfort in the patterns as they are, even if their permanence cannot be assured. And as the meadow begins to fade, its golden hues melting into the deep blue of twilight, the paradox drifts softly into the background. The brook's gentle murmur lingers for a moment longer, like a faint echo, before it too dissolves into the stillness. From this quiet, another thought begins to emerge, carried on the same soothing current: the black hole information paradox. Picture now the vast expanse of space, a canvas of endless black dotted with distant stars. In the heart of this cosmic sea lies a black hole, its presence marked by the way it bends light and warps time itself. It is a silent, enigmatic entity, its edges, known as the event horizon, a boundary where all we know seems to unravel. The black hole information paradox quietly asks, what happens to information that falls inside? Is it lost forever, or does it somehow endure? The black hole information paradox is a puzzle nestled within the fabric of the universe itself. Information, according to the laws of physics, cannot simply vanish. Yet, a black hole swallows everything: matter, energy, even light, beyond its event horizon. What becomes of the information if it is lost forever? It challenges the foundations of the quantum mechanics. But if it is preserved, where does it go? The paradox remains, suspended like the black hole itself, at the edge of understanding. The vastness of space envelops you, the silence stretching infinitely. Stars twinkle faintly in the distance, their light calm and unwavering. The paradox hums quietly in the background, not asking for resolution, but merely existing as a reflection of the universe's mysteries. The laws of nature seem constant, yet here, at the event horizon, they falter, leaving questions unanswered. The cosmos, with its serene expanse, invites you to linger. The paradox is not a problem to be solved, but a gentle reminder of the unknown. The black hole, though invisible, is part of the universe's harmony, its enigma adding depth to the vast celestial melody. And as the stars continue their quiet shimmer, the paradox drifts further into the distance, making way for another. Catch 22. Catch 22 emerges softly, like the turn of a page in an old familiar book. It is the paradox of circular logic, where a situation traps itself in its own rules. Imagine an airman who wishes to be declared unfit to fly. To do so, he must request a mental evaluation. But the act of requesting such an evaluation proves his sanity, rendering him fit to fly. Around and around it goes, a loop with no exit. The setting shifts to a quiet airfield, its vast openness stretching beneath a pale blue sky. A gentle wind carries the scent of grass and distant rain. The paradox, like the airfield itself, is vast yet contained, its boundaries marked by rules that cannot be broken. The airman stands still, caught in the quiet absurdity of the situation. Yet there is no urgency, no rush to resolve. The paradox simply exists, inviting contemplation of the strange interplay between freedom and constraint. As the wind whispers through the tall grass, the paradox softens, fading into the horizon. The airfield grows quieter, its boundaries dissolving into the calm of the present moment. And from this quiet, another thought arises: the bootstrap paradox. The bootstrap paradox unfolds like the hands of a clock moving in reverse, its essence tied to the nature of time itself. Imagine receiving a book from the future, its pages containing knowledge you later use to write the same book. Who, then, is the author? The paradox loops endlessly, blurring the line between cause and effect. The setting shifts to a quiet library, its shelves stretching endlessly into the dim light. The air is cool and still, the scent of old paper filling the space. A single book rests on a wooden table, its title glowing faintly in the subdued light. The paradox resides within its pages, a question of origins that turns back on itself. Time feels fluid here, its flow neither forward nor backward, but suspended in an eternal present. The paradox does not demand understanding, it simply invites you to rest within its circular rhythm. As the library fades into the quiet, the paradox dissolves, leaving only the soft ticking of a distant clock. And from this stillness, another begins to take shape, the omnipotence paradox. The omnipotence paradox emerges as a quiet riddle, questioning the very nature of unlimited power. Can an omnipotent being create a stone so heavy that even they cannot lift it? If they can, there is something they cannot do: lift the stone. If they cannot, then their power is limited in its creation. The paradox loops gently, resting at the intersection of logic and infinity. Picture a serene mountaintop, the air crisp and still, with clouds drifting softly below. At the summit rests the imagined stone, immense and immovable. It glistens faintly in the diffused light, an object born of boundless power, yet embodying its own contradiction. The mountain stands silent, indifferent to the puzzle it hosts, as though it has existed beyond the reach of reason itself. The paradox invites no debate, no urgency to answer. It simply poses its question, lingering like the gentle breeze that brushes the peak. The riddle becomes a reflection on limits and possibilities, a quiet meditation on the nature of existence and the infinite. As the clouds begin to shift, obscuring the stone, the paradox dissolves into the vastness of the sky, fading like the echo of a distant bell. And in this stillness, a new thought forms: the arrow paradox. The arrow paradox begins in motion, yet remains suspended in stillness. Imagine an arrow flying through the air, its journey seemingly smooth and continuous. But as the paradox posits, at any single instant in time, the arrow is motionless, occupying only one point in space. If every moment is motionless, how then does motion exist? The scene transforms into a quiet forest, where the arrow hangs mid-flight, frozen in time. The air is calm, the sunlight filtering softly through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. The paradox stretches infinitely within the stillness, its question flowing through the quiet spaces between the moments. The paradox does not challenge the reality of motion. It simply asks you to pause and consider the unseen rhythms that make it possible. The stillness of each instant blends seamlessly into the next, creating the illusion of movement, like the frames of an endless film. And as the arrow begins to dissolve into the quiet of the forest, the paradox gently fades, its stillness replaced by a new thought: the experience paradox. The experience paradox arises like a gentle ripple in the mind. How can we ever know if others' experiences mirror our own? When you see the color blue, does it appear the same to someone else? The paradox rests in the impossibility of truly stepping outside your own perception to confirm another's. Now, imagine a tranquil lake, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the endless sky above. The water is cool to the touch, yet the way it feels to you may never be known to another. The paradox floats on the lake's surface, its quiet ripples suggesting the limits of understanding another's world, while inviting you to marvel at the beauty of your own. The lake stretches endlessly, its reflection blurring the boundary between sky and water. The paradox does not seek an answer. It offers only a quiet reminder of the mysteries of shared existence. As the ripples fade and the lake grows still once more, the experience paradox drifts away, leaving only calm. It cannot be grasped or demanded. It arrives quietly, filling the spaces where striving falls away. The garden becomes a reminder of this truth, its beauty unhurried, its joy unforced. And as the sun dips lower, casting the garden in golden light, the paradox fades gently, leaving only the soft echo of the bird's song. From the quiet of the garden, another paradox begins to take shape, the unexpected hanging paradox. The unexpected hanging paradox arrives like a quiet conundrum, unfolding with an air of mystery. It tells of a prisoner sentenced to be hanged at some point during the week, but the execution will come as a surprise. The prisoner reasons that if the hanging were on the last day, it could no longer be a surprise. He eliminates each day for the same reason, concluding that the hanging cannot occur at all. Yet, when it happens, he is caught off guard, precisely as promised. The setting shifts to a quiet, misty courtyard, surrounded by tall stone walls that rise into the grayness above. The air is cool and still, with only the occasional rustling of leaves breaking the silence. The paradox lingers like the fog, settling in gently, asking you to consider the interplay between logic and unpredictability. The prisoner's reasoning, though flawless, is undone by the very nature of surprise. It's not a contradiction, but a gentle reminder that some outcomes defy the bounds of rational expectation. The paradox doesn't insist on resolution. It merely rests there, like the mist curling softly around the courtyard stones. Slowly, the fog begins to lift, revealing an open sky, and the paradox fades into the calm of understanding. From this clearing emerges another timeless riddle: the two envelopes, paradox. The two envelopes, paradox, begins with a simple choice. Two identical envelopes sit before you, one containing a sum of money and the other containing twice as much. You select one envelope and are given the chance to switch. Logic whispers that the expected value is always higher if you switch, no matter which you choose. And yet, if that logic applies to both, the paradox arises, a loop of endless indecision. The scene transforms into a quiet study, its wooden desk illuminated by the soft glow of a single lamp. Two envelopes rest on the desk, their plain surfaces hiding their mystery. The room is still, the faint ticking of a clock in the corner, marking the passage of time. The paradox hums softly in the air, a gentle rhythm of doubt and choice. The question isn't about which envelope to choose, it's about the nature of decision making itself, the quiet tug of war between reason and uncertainty. The envelopes sit undisturbed, their contents unknown, their presence a reminder that some choices are not meant to be resolved, but simply lived with. As the lamp's light begins to dim, the envelopes blur into the surrounding quiet, and the paradox slips away like a fading thought. From this serene study, another question emerges, a paradox painted in black and white. The paradox of the ravens. The paradox of the ravens arrives with the quiet elegance of a riddle in nature. It asks, how does observing a black raven confirm the statement, all ravens are black? By logic, observing anything that is not black and not a raven, say a green apple, should also confirm this statement. Yet this seems intuitively strange. The paradox rests here, balanced delicately between logic and intuition. The scene shifts to a serene orchard at twilight where the last light of day filters through the leaves. A lone raven perches silently on a branch, its feathers shimmering faintly in the dim glow. Below, a basket of green apples rests on the soft grass, their surfaces cool and smooth to the touch. The paradox hovers gently between the raven and the apples, inviting reflection on the curious interplay of observation and understanding. The raven sits still, its presence a quiet anchor, while the apples lie undisturbed, their green surfaces glowing softly against the darkening earth. The paradox does not insist on resolving its strange conclusion. It merely offers itself as a meditation on how we come to know and understand the world. The orchard grows quieter as the light fades and the raven takes flight, disappearing into the deepening night. The paradox, too, vanishes into the stillness, giving way to the next thought, the friendship paradox. The friendship paradox enters like the gentle hum of a distant conversation, revealing an odd truth about the social fabric of life. On average, your friends are likely to have more friends than you do. This paradox isn't a critique, but an observation of networks and connections woven together like threads in a quiet tapestry. Imagine a calm park on a soft autumn day where golden leaves drift gently to the ground. A wooden bench sits beneath a sprawling oak tree, and you find yourself seated there, watching as distant figures stroll and talk along winding paths. And from this calm, the grandfather paradox begins to take form. The grandfather paradox emerges like a shadowed path winding through the fabric of time itself. It asks a question both curious and profound. If you traveled back in time and prevented your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, would you ever exist? And if you didn't exist, how could you travel back in time to make such an action possible? The paradox coils gently, looping endlessly, caught in the interplay between causation and existence. Now, imagine a quiet village under a moonlit sky, its cobblestone streets lined with houses whose windows glow faintly with warmth. At the center of the village stands a great clock tower, its hands moving steadily, marking the passage of time. You walk softly through the streets, each step feeling as though it echoes through both the past and the future. Time here seems pliable, bending in on itself, yet still carrying a quiet inevitability. The paradox feels like the chime of the clock overhead, resonating through the stillness. It does not ask for resolution, but instead invites you to linger in its gentle riddle. The notion of time becomes less about linear progression and more about the delicate interplay of moments, each dependent on the others, yet somehow independent as well. The village fades slowly into the quiet, its streets vanishing into the fabric of time itself, and the paradox retreats softly into the stillness. And from this quiet, another thought begins to rise, like the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. The Sorite's paradox. The Sorite's paradox arrives as a question of subtlety and gradual change. It begins with a single grain of sand. If you add another and another, when does it become a heap? And if you remove the grains one by one, at what point does it cease to be one? The paradox whispers softly of boundaries and definitions, challenging the way we draw lines in the sand. The scene shifts to a vast desert, its golden dunes stretching endlessly beneath a soft, amber sky. The sand is warm beneath your feet, each grain catching the sunlight in a quiet shimmer. A gentle wind brushes over the landscape, moving the grains almost imperceptibly, shifting the contours of the dunes over time. The paradox lingers like the wind, its presence subtle and pervasive. It doesn't seek to answer the question of when a heap begins or ends. It simply invites you to consider the fluidity of boundaries, the way things change without clear demarcation. The desert seems infinite, its beauty resting in the constant yet imperceptible motion of its sands. As the wind grows softer, the paradox fades into the stillness of the desert, leaving behind only the quiet rhythm of the shifting dunes. And from this stillness, another paradox quietly emerges, the billiard ball paradox. The billiard ball paradox rolls gently into thought, a question about causality and the nature of time travel. Imagine a billiard ball sent back in time along a perfectly curved trajectory. Could it collide with its past self and prevent its original journey? If it does, how could it have traveled back in time in the first place? The paradox rests in this loop of cause and effect, like a quiet ripple circling endlessly in a still pool. The scene shifts to a dimly lit billiard hall, its atmosphere hushed and serene. A single table stretches before you, the green felt soft under the dim glow of a hanging lamp. The billiard ball sits at rest, gleaming faintly. With the softest motion, you send it rolling across the table. Its trajectory is smooth, calculated, yet there is a curious inevitability to its motion, as if time itself bends around it. The paradox lingers with each gentle roll, a quiet reminder of how actions and outcomes weave together, forming loops that feel both complete and incomplete. The ball's motion slows, its quiet momentum fading as it comes to rest, its paradox dissolving into the still air of the room. The table, the ball, and the quiet space around them fade into shadow, and from that shadow rises a new thought, the paradox of hedonism. The paradox of hedonism drifts softly into view, questioning the pursuit of happiness. It suggests that the more directly you seek pleasure, the harder it becomes to attain. Joy, it seems, often arises when least expected, as a byproduct of something else. The paradox speaks gently, like the soft hum of a distant melody, weaving through the quiet of your thoughts. Picture now a peaceful garden, its paths winding between blooming flowers and fruit-laden trees. A wooden bench rests beneath the shade of an ancient oak, its leaves whispering softly in the breeze. You sit here, not seeking anything in particular, simply observing the beauty of the garden around you. The scent of lavender and fresh earth fills the air, and a small bird sings a quiet tune in the distance. The paradox rests in this simplicity, suggesting that happiness, like the bird's song, often comes unbidden. Each figure represents a point in the vast web of connections, some knots tied more tightly than others. The paradox rests in the realization that the threads aren't distributed evenly. Some people naturally hold more connections, and through them, the web stretches farther than it otherwise would. It isn't unfair. It's simply how the network flows. As the figures grow fainter, disappearing into the golden haze of the park, the paradox becomes a quiet reminder of the beauty of connection, an intricate, unbalanced dance that we all participate in. The park grows quieter still, and as the last leaf falls, the paradox gently fades into the soft rhythm of nature. From this golden stillness, a new thought emerges, one that reaches beyond Earth and into the stars. The Fermi Paradox. The Fermi Paradox drifts into thought like a question whispered across the vastness of the cosmos. It asks, in a universe so unimaginably vast, filled with billions of stars and even more planets, where is everyone? If intelligent life exists elsewhere, why is the night sky so silent? The paradox rests at the intersection of awe and solitude, inviting contemplation of the great unknown. The scene expands to an endless star field, the black velvet of space scattered with countless points of light. Each star glimmers faintly, a distant sun in a distant world, its light traveling eons to reach you. The immensity of space presses gently, not with weight, but with wonder, as if the universe itself is holding its breath. Perhaps the silence is not an absence, but a kind of presence. The stars, so far apart yet so constant, seem to carry the quiet suggestion that answers are not always immediate. The paradox does not demand resolution. It simply invites you to gaze upward, to wonder, to listen. The stars continue their slow, eternal dance, their light undiminished by the paradox that hum softly between them. The universe feels vast and unending, yet its silence grows comforting, like the pause between notes in a beautiful melody. And as the stars seem to blur into one great expanse, the Fermi Paradox dissolves into the quiet of space. The journey has come full circle, and the final paradox fades softly into the infinite night, leaving you with the gentle rhythm of your breath and the stillness of the moment. The Fermi Paradox lingers, its question stretching like a gentle thread through the vastness of space. It feels less like a riddle and more like a whispered curiosity. Why, in a universe so vast, so ancient, have we not encountered other voices among the stars? If intelligent life is not unique to Earth, why does the cosmos remain so quiet? Imagine floating gently in the expanse of the universe, weightless, with the stars scattered endlessly around you. Each point of light is distant, yet its glow seems to reach out to you, as if extending a quiet invitation. The Milky Way sprawls across the heavens, a river of light winding through the darkness, its stars numbering in the hundreds of billions. And beyond it, countless other galaxies drift in the cosmic ocean, each containing its own secrets, its own possibilities. The silence of space is not empty, it hums softly with the quiet pulse of the universe. Perhaps the answers lie in the great distances between stars, or in the briefness of civilizations when measured against the eons of cosmic time. Perhaps life exists in forms beyond our understanding, or perhaps it watches quietly, waiting for its moment to reveal itself. The Fermi Paradox, like the light of the stars, is both near and distant, its presence felt even if its resolution remains out of reach. As you drift through this infinite quiet, the paradox becomes a companion, a reminder of both our smallness and our significance. The stars do not demand answers. They simply offer themselves as a backdrop for wonder, their light a constant, steady rhythm in the deep stillness of space. And as the light stretches endlessly around you, the question folds into the calm, no, closer to resolution, but no longer in need of one. Gradually, the stars blur, and the infinite expanse begins to soften. From the silence of space, a new thought begins to form, like the gentle turning of a page in a forgotten book. The Pinocchio Paradox. The Pinocchio Paradox arrives with the charm of a fable, simple yet profound. If Pinocchio were to say, "My nose will now grow," would it grow or would it not? If it does, his statement becomes true, but his nose only grows when he lies. If it doesn't grow, his statement becomes false, but falsehood is what causes his nose to grow. The paradox twists gently, folding in on itself like the spiraling rings of an ancient tree. Imagine a quiet forest, its trees tall and timeless, their canopies forming a soft patchwork of green and gold. Somewhere deep within this forest is a clearing where a wooden puppet sits on a mossy stump, still and thoughtful. The air is filled with the faint scent of pine, and the gentle rustling of leaves carries with it a sense of magic, as though the forest itself is alive with quiet questions. Pinocchio, with his painted smile and wooden joints, holds the paradox not as a burden, but as a curiosity. His words are small and simple, yet they unlock an infinite loop, a quiet dance between truth and falsehood. The paradox does not seek to trap or confuse. It merely invites reflection. What does it mean for something to be true? Can falsehood and truth coexist, weaving together like the sunlight and shadows that dapple the forest floor? The trees around him seem ancient and wise, their roots stretching deep into the earth, their branches reaching for the sky. They have no answers for Pinocchio, yet their stillness offers a kind of comfort, a quiet reminder that some questions are meant to linger unanswered. As the puppet sits quietly, his painted face tilted upward toward the light filtering through the leaves, the paradox seems to settle into the rhythm of the forest itself, its loops becoming less like a puzzle and more like the steady growth of the trees. Time in the forest feels soft and endless, like a dream you could remain in forever. And as the leaves begin to shimmer in the changing light, the clearing fades into the embrace of the woods, taking the paradox with it. From this wooded quiet, another paradox stirs, one rooted in decision and choice, the Newcomb's Paradox. Newcomb's Paradox unfolds like a game played in silence, its rules simple yet deeply unsettling. You stand before two boxes, one transparent, containing a visible $1,000, and one opaque, whose contents depend on a prediction already made by an all knowing being. If you take only the opaque box, it contains $1,000. But if you take both boxes, the opaque one is empty. What do you choose? And more importantly, does your choice matter if the prediction is perfect? The scene shifts to a quiet chamber filled with a golden, ambient light. The two boxes sit on a smooth stone pedestal, their surfaces gleaming faintly in the glow. The transparent box reveals its small but certain treasure, while the opaque box guards its secret with a quiet stillness. The air in the chamber is heavy with expectation, but there is no urgency, only the soft hum of possibility. The paradox lies not in the mechanics of the choice, but in its implications. Is your decision truly yours if it has already been foreseen? The all knowing being is not present, yet its prediction lingers like a shadow in the room, wrapping itself around your thoughts. Do you trust the unseen, choosing faith over certainty? Or do you reach for the visible, clinging to what you know, even if it diminishes what might have been? The golden light in the chamber begins to soften, diffusing into the air like mist. The boxes, too, seem to lose their sharp edges, becoming less like objects and more like thoughts, shifting, intangible, infinite. As the chamber dissolves into the quiet, the paradox folds into itself, leaving you suspended in the gentle balance between choice and destiny. From this soft uncertainty, Another paradox begins to emerge, whispering softly of cycles and causation. The bootstrap paradox. The bootstrap paradox emerges gently, like a soft ripple in a still pond, its essence tied to the curious loops of time. It asks, what happens if an object or piece of information is sent back in time and becomes the very cause of its own existence? The paradox is as delicate as it is infinite, weaving the fabric of causality into a perfect, unbroken circle. Picture now an ancient library, its shelves towering and endless, filled with books whose spines are worn smooth with age. The air is warm, carrying the scent of old paper and ink, a quiet testament to knowledge passed through generations. Somewhere within this labyrinth of stories and ideas lies a single book, its origins unknowable. Did it come from a writer's hand, or was it placed here by someone who found it in the future and brought it to the past? The library feels timeless, as though it has always existed and always will. Its stillness seems to hold the very essence of the paradox, a question of origins that cannot be answered because the beginning and end are the same. The book sits open on a polished wooden table, its pages illuminated by the soft glow of a flickering candle. The words seem to whisper their story, yet they carry no definitive start or conclusion. Who wrote these words? Or have they always been here, waiting to be read? The paradox gently suggests that time itself may not be linear, that the stories we tell and the lives we live may loop and weave in ways beyond comprehension. The library stands as a monument to this idea, its walls bearing witness to the infinite interplay of cause and effect. And as the candle burns lower, its light flickering softly, the book closes itself, its mystery left untouched. The scene fades into shadow, leaving behind the echo of the paradox as it settles into the quiet of your thoughts. From this timeless library, another paradox arises, one rooted in the limits of power and logic, the omnipotence paradox. It comes softly, like a thought that has always been present, asking, can an all-powerful being create a stone so heavy that even they cannot lift it? If such a stone is possible, the being is not omnipotent because they cannot lift it. If it is impossible, they are not omnipotent because they cannot create it. The scene shifts to a serene mountainside where towering peaks rise into a sky brushed with soft hues of twilight. At the heart of this landscape is a single massive stone, its surface smooth and ancient, as if carved by the hands of time itself. The stone is impossibly large, its presence a quiet challenge to the concept of power. The paradox does not challenge faith or belief. It instead invites reflection on the nature of limits and infinities. Power, it seems, may be a concept defined as much by what can be done as by what cannot. The mountain air is crisp and still, carrying with it the faint scent of wildflowers and earth. The stone rests peacefully, immovable yet present, like an anchor in the shifting flow of thought. Perhaps the paradox suggests that even in limitless power, there is beauty in restraint, in knowing that some questions are not meant to be answered. The mountains stand silently, their peaks touching the edge of the heavens, and the stone remains where it is, a quiet reminder of the balance between force and stillness. As the twilight deepens, the paradox fades gently into the embrace of the night, leaving the mountains cloaked in silence. From the quiet of the mountains, the next paradox begins to stir, a question of motion and stillness known as the arrow paradox. The arrow paradox arrives quietly, like the soft whistle of wind through a meadow, carrying with it a delicate inquiry into the nature of motion. It comes from the ancient philosopher Zeno, who proposed this. If time is made of distinct, indivisible moments, then at any given moment, an arrow in flight is motionless. For in that single instant, the arrow occupies a fixed position. If every moment is like this, how can motion exist at all? The scene shifts to an open field bathed in the warm light of early evening. The air is still, except for the occasional rustle of tall grasses swaying gently in the breeze. Above, the sky stretches endlessly, painted in soft hues of orange and lavender. In this serene expanse, an arrow is loosed from a bow, slicing silently through the air. Yet, as you follow its trajectory, time seems to slow until it halts entirely. The arrow hangs motionless in the air, suspended between the bow and its target. This moment of stillness feels infinite, as if the arrow has become a sculpture of its own journey. The paradox begins to take root in the quiet. How can something in motion be still? How can a journey so fluid and continuous be made of infinite moments of pause? The stillness of the arrow is mirrored in the stillness of the world around it. The grasses cease their swaying. The clouds seem frozen mid-drift. The universe holds its breath, and the paradox unfolds like the petals of a flower in the silence. Perhaps motion, the paradox suggests, is not about the individual moments, but the way they flow together, like a stream made not of drops, but of their collective movement. The arrow, though still in this moment, carries within it the memory of where it has been and the promise of where it is going. It is both fixed and moving, both here and there. As the stillness begins to dissolve, the arrow resumes its flight, its path as fluid and natural as the wind that now stirs the grasses once more. The paradox lingers, not as a contradiction, but as a gentle reminder that even the simplest acts, like an arrow's flight, hold mysteries beyond comprehension. The field fades softly into the distance, and from this exploration of motion, another paradox begins to take shape, a paradox of experience and understanding, one that asks us to consider what it means to truly know. The experience paradox steps forward now, like a quiet reflection in a still pond. The experience paradox comes softly, like a ripple spreading across a calm lake. It asks a question both simple and profound. Can you ever truly know what an experience feels like without having lived it yourself? Imagine trying to describe the taste of sweetness to someone who has never tasted sugar, or the feeling of sunlight on skin to one who has never stepped outside. The paradox lies in this: experience is personal, yet we attempt to share and explain it through words and concepts that will always fall short. Picture now a peaceful lakeside at dawn. The water is a mirror, reflecting the soft hues of pink and gold as the first light of day touches the world. A rowboat drifts gently on the surface, its oars resting still, and the only sounds are the occasional calls of birds and the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. You stand on the shore, watching the delicate balance between the lake and the sky. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of earth and water. Imagine stepping into the boat and rowing out onto the lake, the oars dipping quietly into the water, creating ripples that stretch out infinitely. Each ripple feels like a thought, an attempt to share the sensation of being here, of experiencing this moment. Yet no ripple, no matter how beautifully it moves across the surface, can truly capture the fullness of the experience. The lake holds its secrets, and the paradox rests gently on the surface, like the soft light of morning. The paradox reminds us that some things can only be felt, not explained, and perhaps that is where the beauty lies, in the gap between experience and expression, in the quiet understanding that not everything can be known or shared completely. As the boat drifts further from the shore, the ripples begin to settle, and the lake returns to its stillness. The paradox fades into the quiet, leaving you with the feeling of the oars in your hands and the morning light on your face. From the calm of the lake, a new paradox emerges, one that reaches back through the corridors of time, the grandfather paradox. It arrives like the ticking of an old clock, steady and measured, yet filled with the echoes of a question that defies logic. What happens, it asks, if you travel back in time and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother? Without their union, you would not exist to go back in time. And yet, here you are. The paradox loops endlessly, like the pendulum of the clock, swinging back and forth without ever resolving. The grandfather paradox settles in like the steady tick of an ancient clock, its rhythm inviting you to trace the paths of time. The question it raises is deceptively simple, yet infinitely profound. If you were to travel back in time and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, what would happen? Would your actions erase your own existence? And if so, how could you have traveled back in the first place? The paradox forms an infinite loop where cause and effect dissolve into one another, leaving only questions. Picture an old study, lit by the warm glow of a single, flickering lamp. A clock stands in the corner, its pendulum swinging steadily, casting faint shadows that shift with each movement. The room feels timeless, its wooden shelves filled with faded books that seem to hold the weight of untold stories. On a desk in the center of the room sits an old journal, its pages worn and yellowed, as though it has been opened and closed by countless hands. The air carries the faint scent of aged paper and polished wood, a quiet reminder of lives lived before your own. The journal lies open, revealing a family tree drawn in careful, deliberate strokes. The names feel familiar, yet distant, like echoes of a story you've heard but cannot fully recall. Your finger traces the line connecting your grandparents, following it downward to your parents and finally to yourself. But as you gaze at the tree, the line connecting the past to the present seems to blur, fading in and out of existence, like a memory slipping from your grasp. The paradox invites you to imagine stepping into this timeline, walking backward through the years to the moment when your grandfather first met your grandmother. What if you altered that moment? The scene begins to shift, the study fading into the soft, golden light of a summer's day long ago. You find yourself standing in a quiet park where two young strangers sit on a bench, their laughter carried on the warm breeze. They are unaware of your presence, just as they are unaware of the future that will unfold because of this meeting. If you were to change this moment, to redirect their paths, what would happen to your own existence? Would you vanish like a shadow at dusk? Or would the universe find a way to mend the timeline, stitching together a new path that leads back to you? The paradox does not answer these questions. It only deepens the mystery, like the endless swing of the clock's pendulum. The park begins to fade, its golden light dissolving into the soft, steady glow of the study once more. The clock continues, its rhythmic ticking, unchanged by the questions that linger in the air. The journal lies closed now, as if the paradox has folded itself neatly into its pages, waiting for another time. The air feels heavier, quieter, as though the past and present have gently intertwined. From the steady rhythm of the clock, another paradox begins to form, one that deals with the boundaries of identity and the smallest shifts that define us. The Sorite's paradox. Like grains of sand slipping through an hourglass, it asks, how many grains make a heap? And if you remove them, one by one, at what point does the heap cease to exist? It steps forward now, quiet and contemplative, as if carried on the whisper of falling sand. The Sorite's paradox drifts in like a breeze, stirring grains of sand on a quiet shore. It is both subtle and profound, asking a question that seems so simple. When does a collection of small things become something greater? And at what point, when those small things are removed, does it cease to be? A heap of sand becomes its own enigma. If you take away a single grain, it is still a heap. But if you continue, grain by grain, where does the heap disappear? Picture now a vast desert, stretching endlessly beneath a soft, golden sky. The dunes rise and fall like the gentle waves of a sleeping ocean, their shapes shifting ever so slightly in the whisper of the wind. You find yourself at the base of a dune, gazing up at the millions upon millions of grains of sand that form its towering presence. The scene is quiet, timeless, as though the desert has always been here, waiting for this very question. You kneel down and scoop a handful of sand, letting it sift slowly through your fingers. The grains fall, one by one, each catching the fading light. As it slips back into the dune, it feels infinite, yet you know each grain is distinct, its own tiny world. The paradox takes shape in the space between your fingers, asking softly, is this still part of the heap? Or has it become something else entirely? The desert seems to echo the question, its silence inviting you to consider the fragile boundary between something and nothing. The sand beneath your feet feels firm, solid, yet it is made of countless grains that are individually so small, so impermanent. Together, they form a foundation. Alone, they are scattered by the wind. Perhaps the paradox is not about sand at all, but about identity, about the delicate balance of what makes us who we are. Like the dune, we are made of countless moments, thoughts, and experiences, each one as fleeting and fragile as a single grain of sand. If you were to take them away, one by one, at what point would you no longer be the same person? Or is it the whole, the sum of all parts, that gives us meaning? The wind begins to pick up, carrying with it the faint sound of shifting dunes. The grains of sand swirl around you, as if the desert itself is alive with the paradox, its endless, shifting forms a reminder of the question that will never fully resolve. As the breeze softens and the sands settle, the desert becomes still once more, its vastness stretching into the horizon. From the quiet contemplation of the dunes, another paradox begins to emerge, this one moving not through sand, but through time and space itself. The billiard ball paradox. It approaches like the quiet sound of a cue stick striking a ball, carrying with it the echoes of causality looping back upon itself. The billiard ball paradox rolls into thought like the soft clatter of a cue ball striking another, setting them into motion across a silent billiards table. It begins with a simple premise. Imagine a ball sent back in time through a wormhole, only to collide with its earlier self, altering its trajectory so that it never enters the wormhole in the first place. The paradox loops endlessly, questioning the very fabric of cause and effect. Now, picture a dimly lit room, the only illumination coming from the soft overhead light that falls upon a polished billiards table. The table's surface is smooth and green, its edges lined with pristine leather cushions. At the center rests a single cue ball, perfectly still, as if waiting for its story to unfold. The air is quiet, save for the faint ticking of a clock on the wall, marking the passage of time. You step forward, taking the cue stick in hand, and line up your shot. As the stick connects with the ball, a soft crack echoes through the room, and the cue ball begins to roll, its motion smooth and steady. But as it moves, the room begins to shift, the edges of reality bending and folding like the pages of a book turning back on themselves. Suddenly, another ball appears, identical to the first, emerging from a shimmering wormhole at the far end of the table. The two balls move toward each other, their paths destined to intersect. The second ball, the one from the future, strikes the first, sending it off its original course. The cue ball now veers away from the wormhole, its journey altered. The wormhole shimmers faintly before disappearing, leaving the paradox suspended in the air like a question with no answer. How can the future influence the past in such a way that it erases its own cause? The paradox sits in the quiet, like the balls resting motionless on the table, their interaction frozen in time. It invites you to consider the nature of causality, of loops and lines, and the ways in which the future and the past may be intertwined. Perhaps the paradox is a reminder that time is not as straightforward as it seems. Like the smooth surface of the billiards table, it appears flat and predictable, yet beneath it lies a world of hidden complexities, where events ripple backward and forward, touching one another in ways we cannot fully grasp. The balls remain still now, the table quiet, and the room begins to fade into shadow. From this loop of causality, another paradox quietly steps forward, one that contemplates happiness and the pursuit of it, the paradox of hedonism. It approaches gently, like the sound of a soft breeze through a field of wildflowers, carrying with it the quiet truth that seeking joy too fervently may make it harder to find. The paradox of hedonism unfolds like a gentle melody drifting across a meadow, asking a question so subtle it seems almost self-evident. Can happiness be truly achieved by pursuing it directly? It whispers that the harder we chase joy, the more elusive it becomes, as if the very act of pursuit places it just out of reach. Happiness, like a butterfly, lands softly when you least expect it, but flutters away when you grasp for it too eagerly. Imagine now a serene field bathed in the golden light of a late afternoon. Wildflowers sway lazily in the breeze, their vibrant colors blending into the soft greens and yellows of the grass. The air is warm and fragrant, filled with the quiet hum of bees drifting from flower to flower. In the distance, a narrow path winds through the meadow, disappearing into a forest where the sunlight filters through the leaves like a cascade of liquid gold. You walk slowly along the path, your footsteps light on the earth, Ahead, you notice a butterfly, its delicate wings shimmering with iridescent hues. It flits gracefully from flower to flower, pausing just long enough to drink in the nectar before taking flight again. The sight of it fills you with a quiet, unexpected joy, a sense of wonder that seems to settle into your very being. But as you take a step closer, hoping to admire it more closely, the butterfly darts away, its movements quick and unpredictable. You follow, stepping carefully through the tall grass. Yet the closer you try to get, the farther it flies until it disappears entirely into the trees. The meadow feels suddenly still, as if holding its breath, and you realize the joy you felt watching the butterfly has been replaced by frustration at its absence. The paradox comes into focus, gently reminding you that happiness is not something to be chased. It is a byproduct of moments lived fully, of attention given freely to the world around you. Like the meadow, joy exists all around you, not in the catching, but in the noticing, in the act of being present with what is. As you stand there, the breeze picks up again, carrying with it the soft rustle of the grass and the faint scent of wildflowers. You take a deep breath, letting the air fill your lungs, and the meadow begins to shift, its golden light fading into a softer, quieter glow. The paradox lingers in the air, not as a question to be solved, but as a reminder to let go, to allow happiness to find you in its own time. From the quiet contemplation of joy and its pursuit, another paradox begins to emerge, one that carries with it an air of suspense and inevitability. The unexpected hanging paradox. It arrives like a cryptic riddle whispered in the dark, asking how we can reconcile the certainty of an event with the surprise it promises. The unexpected hanging paradox unfolds like the slow tolling of a distant bell, its resonance carrying both anticipation and mystery. It poses a peculiar question. If you know an event will happen, but are told it will surprise you, how can it truly remain unexpected? The paradox traps itself in its own logic, circling endlessly between certainty and unpredictability. Picture now a quiet courtyard at dusk, its cobblestones glistening faintly from an earlier rain. The air is cool, laced with the scent of damp earth and the faint sweetness of nearby jasmine. In the center stands a lone wooden gallows, its silhouette sharp against the deepening indigo of the sky. A figure sits nearby on a stone bench, their head bowed as they contemplate their fate. They have been told they will face the gallows at some point in the coming week, but the execution will come as a surprise. As the figure considers this, the paradox begins to take shape. They reason that if the execution were scheduled for the final day of the week, it could not be a surprise. After all, by the end of the sixth day, with no execution, they would know the event must occur on the seventh. Thus, the last day is eliminated. But by this same logic, the penultimate day is also ruled out. For if the last day is impossible, then the day before, it would be certain once the fifth day ended. One by one, the days fall away in the figure's mind, leaving them to conclude that no day is possible for a surprise execution. Yet, as the days pass, they live with an uneasy tension. Each morning brings a renewed possibility, and each evening leaves them wondering if the gallows will claim them at dawn. Finally, one morning, without warning, they are awakened and led to the courtyard. Surprise washes over them As they realize the paradox has sprung its trap, they had convinced themselves it was impossible, and in doing so, ensured that the event remained unexpected. The gallows stands silent now, its shadow stretching long across the courtyard. The paradox lingers in the cool evening air, a quiet reminder that certainty and surprise can coexist in ways that defy understanding. It whispers of the delicate balance between what we know and what we believe, leaving a faint echo of its mystery as the scene begins to dissolve. From the stillness of the courtyard, another paradox takes form, one that weaves through the fabric of time itself. The bootstrap paradox. It approaches like a soft spiral, looping endlessly through past and future, blurring the boundaries between cause and effect. The bootstrap paradox enters like a quiet, endless spiral, winding through time without a clear beginning or end. It whispers a question that seems simple but grows more profound with every loop. How can something exist without ever being created? Imagine an object, idea, or piece of information that travels through time, its origin lost because it was never truly born. The paradox asks, if the source is missing, can the thing itself exist at all? Now, picture a quiet library at the edge of a small town, its tall windows glowing softly in the twilight. Inside, the scent of old books fills the air, mingling with the faint aroma of polished wood. Shelves line the walls, filled with volumes of every kind, histories, mysteries, and novels waiting patiently for a reader to give them life. At the center of the room stands an old oak table, its surface illuminated by the golden light of a reading lamp. On the table lies a single book, its cover blank and worn, as though it has traveled through many hands. You reach for it and open it carefully, the pages crackling faintly under your fingertips. To your astonishment, you find that the book is filled with your own handwriting. It is a journal of ideas, inventions, and stories you've never written, but somehow recognize as your own. The paradox begins to take shape as you realize what this book represents. You've never seen it before, yet it seems to have come from you. You flip through the pages, each one revealing something familiar yet unfamiliar, and then you reach the final page where a simple instruction is written, pass this book along. The words are clear, yet they deepen the mystery. If you give the book to someone else, where did it come from originally? Did someone in the future find it and send it back to you, only for you to pass it forward again? The origin dissolves into the endless loop of time. The library seems to grow quieter, its walls fading into the background as the paradox swirls around you. Time itself feels like the turning of the pages, circular, infinite, without a beginning or an end. The book rests in your hands, its weight both comforting and confounding. The paradox does not ask for answers. It simply invites you to dwell in the beauty of the mystery, in the way it folds time and causality into itself, like the pages of the book you hold. As the soft light of the lamp begins to dim, the library fades into shadow, and the book gently disappears from your hands. The paradox lingers like the faint scent of the old pages, a reminder that some loops are not meant to be unraveled. From this infinite loop, another paradox begins to unfold, one that deals with choice and probability. The two envelopes. Paradox. It enters softly, like the flutter of paper being opened, inviting you to consider the balance between logic and uncertainty. The two envelopes. Paradox unfolds like the soft rustling of paper, its quiet question slipping into thought like the gentle turning of a coin in midair. It begins with a simple premise. Imagine two envelopes, one containing a certain amount of money and the other containing double that amount. You are allowed to choose one envelope and open it, revealing the amount inside. Then, you are given a choice. Keep the envelope you've opened or trade it for the other, unopened one. The paradox asks, what should you do? The room around you forms into a quiet study, its atmosphere thick with the kind of stillness that invites contemplation. A single desk stands in the center, its dark wooden surface polished to a mirror-like shine. On the desk lie two envelopes, identical in size and shape, their unmarked surfaces giving no hint as to what they hold. A faint light from a nearby window catches the edges of the envelopes, making them seem to glow faintly against the dark wood. You reach out and take one of the envelopes, its weight reassuring in your hand. As you open it, you find a modest sum of money inside, a tangible amount that feels both satisfying and sufficient. But then, the question begins to take shape. Should you open the second envelope? Logic seems to nudge you toward uncertainty, whispering that the second envelope might hold twice as much. Yet, it might also hold half, leaving you with less than you already have. Your mind begins to turn over the possibilities, like a stone rolling in a gentle stream. If you were to switch, the paradox suggests that the expected value of the unopened envelope will always seem greater, no matter which one you choose. And yet, this reasoning loops endlessly, leaving you caught between the lure of potential gain and the stability of what is already in your hand. The room grows quieter as the envelopes rest before you, their contents concealed in mystery. You hold the first envelope, now empty after revealing its treasure, while the second remains untouched. The paradox is not about the money at all. It is about the delicate balance of decision making, about the way uncertainty and curiosity pull at the edges of logic. It reminds you that sometimes there is no correct choice, only the act of choosing itself. The light from the window begins to fade, casting long shadows across the room. The envelopes blur into the dimness, their presence fading like the echo of the question they carried. The paradox leaves you with a quiet understanding that some decisions are less about outcomes and more about the experience of wrestling with the unknown. As the envelopes disappear into the soft darkness, another paradox takes shape, this one dressed in black and white, the paradox of the ravens. It enters with a faint air of curiosity, asking how we define truth and how evidence can sometimes obscure what it seeks to prove. The paradox of the ravens enters with the soft rustle of wings, carrying with it a question about truth, evidence, and the way we understand the world. It's also known as Hempel's paradox, and it begins simply, imagine the statement, all ravens are black. At first, it seems straightforward, but the paradox asks, can evidence for this statement come from something unexpected, like seeing a green apple? You find yourself standing in a quiet orchard, the trees heavy with fruit. Their branches arch gracefully under the weight of apples, some red, some green, their skins glistening faintly in the soft light of an overcast sky. A single black raven perches on a nearby fence post, its glossy feathers catching the faint light. As it tilts its head to watch you, the scene feels serene yet thoughtful, as though the orchard itself is part of the question. The raven is a striking figure against the muted backdrop of the orchard, and its presence seems to confirm the statement all ravens are black. Yet, as you pick a green apple from a low hanging branch, the paradox begins to stir. If the statement is equivalent to saying everything that is not black is not a raven, then this green apple, which is not black and not a raven, also supports the truth of the statement. But how can something so unrelated, an apple, be evidence for the color of ravens? The question hangs in the air like the stillness before rain, challenging the way we think about logic and evidence. The raven on the fence post flutters its wings and takes flight, disappearing into the gray sky, leaving you alone with the quiet orchard and its unanswered question. As you hold the green apple, its smooth surface cool against your palm, the paradox invites you to consider the nature of understanding. Does evidence always come from what seems obvious? Or can it emerge from unexpected places? Perhaps the paradox is not about apples or ravens at all, but about the way we connect ideas and form conclusions. It suggests that truth can be subtle, elusive, and sometimes found in places we'd never think to look. The orchard seems to hum softly with this thought, the tree swaying gently in a breeze that carries the faintest whisper of the raven's wings. As the wind calms and the apple tree fades into the background, another paradox begins to take shape, one that steps lightly into the realm of human relationships, the friendship paradox. It approaches like the quiet murmur of a gathering crowd, inviting you to consider the peculiar ways our social worlds connect. The friendship paradox arrives softly, like the quiet hum of voices drifting through a sunlit park. It begins with an observation that seems simple, but carries a surprising twist. On average, your friends are likely to have more friends than you do. The paradox is not just a matter of numbers. It invites you to consider the intricate web of connections that bind us all and the way they shape our perspectives. You find yourself in a tranquil park, its pathways lined with tall, leafy trees that sway gently in the breeze. A wooden bench sits beneath one of the trees, and nearby, a small group of friends laugh and chat as they toss a frisbee back and forth. Their movements are fluid and effortless, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm that feels both lively and serene. The scene is warm and inviting, a tableau of companionship and connection. As you watch, the paradox begins to unfold. You think about your own circle of friends, how some seem to know everyone, while others, like you, may feel their social world is smaller. The paradox points out that popular people are more likely to be your friends because they simply know more people, creating the illusion that everyone else is more connected than you are. It's not that your world is small, but that the nature of networks amplifies the prominence of those at their center. The group in the park shifts slightly as another person joins them, greeted with cheerful smiles and open arms. You notice how effortlessly the circle expands, its edges rippling outward like a stone dropped into still water. The paradox is not meant to dishearten. Instead, it reveals a quiet truth about the way we perceive our place in the world. It suggests that connection is not just about numbers, but about the quality and depth of relationships. As the frisbee arcs through the air, its motion smooth and unhurried, you reflect on the paradox's gentle lesson. The value of friendship is not measured by how many people you know, but by the moments of shared laughter, understanding, and warmth. The park seems to hold this truth in its stillness, the leaves rustling softly as if to agree. The sun begins to dip lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the grass. The voices of the friends grow quieter as they wander toward the park's edge, their figures fading into the soft glow of twilight. The paradox lingers in the air, a gentle reminder of the unseen connections that weave us together. As the scene dissolves into the quiet of evening, another paradox begins to stir, one that looks up at the vastness of the cosmos, the Fermi Paradox. It steps forward like a single, twinkling star in a night sky, asking why the universe, so immense and ancient, appears so silent. The Fermi Paradox unfolds like the deep, endless stillness of a starry night, whispering a question as old as curiosity itself. If the universe is so vast and filled with countless stars, why haven't we found evidence of other intelligent life? It is a paradox that sits between wonder and silence, asking how such an infinite expanse could feel so empty. You stand beneath a sprawling night sky, its infinite canvas scattered with countless stars, each one glowing softly like a distant beacon. The Milky Way stretches overhead, a river of light spilling across the heavens. The air is cool and still, and the only sound is the faint rustle of wind through the grass beneath your feet. The immensity of the cosmos surrounds you, and with it comes a sense of both awe and quiet longing. The paradox begins to take shape as you look upward, your gaze tracing constellations and imagining worlds orbiting distant suns. With billions of stars in the galaxy, many with planets in the habitable zone, the odds of intelligent life seem overwhelmingly high. Yet, the silence is deafening. No signals, no signs, no voices from across the void. It's as though the universe is a vast library filled with closed books, their stories hidden from view. You think of the possibilities. Perhaps other civilizations exist, but are too far away for us to detect. Or perhaps they've risen and fallen, their brief moments of brilliance extinguished before we had a chance to find them. Maybe they choose not to communicate, or maybe we are simply too early or too late to meet them. The questions spiral outward, like ripples in a still pond, each one echoing the quiet mystery of the paradox. The stars above seem to pulse faintly, as though they, too, are pondering the vastness of the space between them. You feel the paradox settling around you, not as a riddle to be solved, but as an invitation to wonder. It reminds you that the silence of the universe is not emptiness, but possibility, a canvas waiting for discoveries yet to come. As you stand there, the night deepens and the stars begin to blur, their light softening into the darkness. The paradox lingers like the faint glow of starlight, a gentle nudge to keep looking upward, to continue asking questions even when answers seem far away. And with that final ripple of thought, the paradoxes settle into the quiet recesses of your mind, their gentle mysteries fading into the stillness of the night. They leave behind not solutions, but a calm acceptance of the unknown, a reminder that some questions are meant to be lived with rather than solved. The universe holds its secrets close, inviting you to dream, to rest, and to drift gently into sleep.